Hey everybody, it's Lynn Pratt. Thanks for joining me. Today I'm going to talk about mixing paint on your palette. So mine's a little bit different. I use a plate and I keep all of my paint in these little plastic containers, and instead of using a well on a palette, but it works the same way if you have a standard palette with a well. So I have my paint in my little container. I've sprayed some water on it to re-wet it, and I'm just going to get a little bit of paint on my brush and put it on my palette. So this is how I work. I pull it from these little bins, I put it on my plate or palette while I'm working to mix it up. So when I've pulled the paint out right away, it's in a much thicker mixture. So if I want to get a dark color on my paper, all I have to do is use this mixture of paint. It's about the consistency of whole milk or cream, which is really about as thick as you would want your paint mixed. So I'm going to take my paint, and you can see that I'm going to get a pretty dark color of that ultramarine, okay? So if I want a dark wash, that's how I would do it. I would not add any more water to the puddle on my palette. And again, if your paint is in a well, you would do it the same way. Your well would just be next to your palette, and you would pull it out and put it into the center of your palette. Now, if I want this watered down for different parts of my painting, a lot of students have a problem. They just add a bunch of water right into this puddle. My suggestion and tip that I like to do is then I just pull a little bit of this paint to the side. Then I get some water on my brush and I mix some water into this puddle of paint. So now I have a lighter wash of the same color. But in another area of my painting, if I still need the darker wash, I can easily go back, go into that original darker wash, and add that paint right to my palette. So I have a lighter wash of it and a darker. If I need it even lighter, I can bring some more water in a separate little puddle, and I have a much lighter wash of that same color. So now I have 3 puddles of different consistency. This one's basically like skim milk. I have a middle one that's kind of like 1%. It's still pretty watery. And then I have my main puddle that I keep at whole milk or cream consistency. And again, you wouldn't want it any thicker than this to put on your paper, or else it would get pasty and you would lose that beautiful transparency of watercolor. So now I have these puddles that I can dip into. So if I want to do something like a changing wash, a wash that goes from light to dark, I have my light puddle. I can add it in. I can add some of that medium wash right to it, and then I can add right in from my darker wash on my plate. And then that way I haven't watered down everything to that watered down light version, but I have all those 3 so I can get right back to that darker version on my palette. So if you're having trouble that you're mixing up a huge puddle of paint and it's super watery and you have to keep letting it dry and do layers and layers of color, just make sure you keep that original, more condensed, more pigment wash on your palette and pull it out to water it down more, but keep that original puddle so that you can get that dark wash back whenever you need it. So I hope this helps. Thanks so much for joining me.